Before we get started, let's have a little quiz. In our story, it says, someone from the crowd came to Jesus, said, "Teacher, teach my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But Jesus said, "Friend, who set me to be judge and arbiter over you?" Okay, who was that? It was God the Father, right? I learned a new word this week, aphorism. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Anybody know what aphorism is? An aphorism? Well, according to the dictionary, it is a general truth. Like the ancient Greeks brought forth an aphorism, know thyself. We're not really sure which ancient Greek said that originally, but know thyself. And here's another one. What is important to you in your life? Have you ever asked that question? Maybe you have, or maybe you just say, "Look, I'm just trying to get through the day." Or, "I don't want to know the answer to the question, what's most important in my life?" There's a lot of talk these days about millennials. According to the Pew Research Center, anyone born between 1981 and 1996, so that would mean they are 23 to 38 this year, they would be a millennial. Now, millennials get a lot of grief these days, especially from the builder generation and the baby boomer generation like me. And they get a lot of grief for good reason. Because, well, they're just not like us. That's a good reason, right? One good thing we can say about millennials, and this is all generalization, one good thing we can say about millennials is that they are interested in doing things that are meaningful. They want to be involved in things that make a difference. They don't necessarily want to join a club, an organization, or a church, which is one of the things we have against them. They're not interested in membership, but if an organization, a club, or a church is involved in doing something to help people, to help the environment, to help the planet, then they might be interested in joining in. Actually, quite often they are. They want their life to make a difference. And we all do. We want our life to make a difference. But to be honest, I haven't really thought about that a whole lot until later in my life. Probably earlier in my life, I was more concerned about providing for my family. Now I don't care about my family. No. But later in life, you start thinking, I wonder if my life made a difference. Will anybody remember me or my efforts after I'm gone? I wondered that when I came back from vacation. I wonder, anybody remember me when I came back? I think this is part of what Ecclesiastes is talking about. He says, all is vanity, vanity, uselessness, worthlessness. I think underneath what he's saying, what I've done, what I've accomplished, is it going to be wasted in the future? Maybe he's thinking, or maybe we're thinking, my efforts, what I've done with my life, what I am doing now, is it worth it? Should I have done things differently? Should I be doing something different now? Does it matter? Our gospel lesson talks about this also. In the parable, a rich man, his land produces abundantly. In other words, he has lots of crops, lots of money, more than his barns will hold. After discussing the situation with himself. And it says here, I think it's kind of comical. And he thought to himself, what should I do? For I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger barns. And there I will store all of my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, I have ample goods laid up for many years. Eat, relax, eat, drink, and be merry. So after discussing the situation with himself, he decides to build bigger barns. And for the record, it was a unanimous decision. He was in total agreement with himself. The rich man obviously never attended one of our children's messages because he didn't know about taking one, and if you have more than one, share. No one needs more than one piece of candy, as I said. We might want more, but we don't need it. The rich man, his barns were full. He didn't need any more, but he didn't share. He built bigger barns so he could keep them to himself. He invested in himself instead of investing in his relationship with God. Now, you could say, nobody really knows what another person's relationship is with God. You can't look into somebody's heart and know how they're feeling. And that may be true. But it's also true that if you want to know what's going on, follow the money. Follow the money. People usually put their money where their heart is. If you want to answer the question, what's most important in my life? Look where most of your money goes. This is why Jesus talked about money and greed so much. When we talk about sin, a lot of people want to talk about sex. Jesus didn't talk about sex too much. He talked about money and greed a lot. In Paul's letter to the Colossians for today, he says, so if we have been raised with Christ, seek the things above, where Christ is. I think quite often when we read that, we start getting pious and spiritual and heavenly when we think about the things from above. But before we leave earth, I think this saying is talking about seek the things from above. It's talking about investing our time, our talents, and our treasures in the things that Jesus is interested in. What is Jesus interested in? That's how we seek the things from above. That's how we invest in our relationship with God. That's how we live a life that is not vanity and worthlessness and chasing after the sun. That's how we live a life of meaning, of purpose. Once upon a time, there was a couple that loved one another so much that they got married, and they very much wanted children, but they couldn't. For whatever reason, they couldn't have any children, and this was very disappointing. The husband was very disappointed, but after a while, he came to realize, look, I love my wife so much, she's enough. Even though I can't have kids, my wife is enough. She was devastated. She was depressed for a long, long time until she found this hobby. She bought these beautiful hand-painted eggs. They come from Eastern Europe. I don't know what they do to them to preserve them so that they can paint them, but if you have ever seen them, they're just gorgeous. She fell in love with them. She was also a bit of an artist, so she started creating her own. It filled the void of not being able to have children, but it began to consume her. She went to fairs and shops and conventions. It took all of her time and all of her energy. Her husband tried to support her by getting involved, even though he really wasn't interested, but he was interested in her, so if she liked it, he would like it. But after a while, he realized she didn't care if he liked it or not. After a while, he realized she didn't care if she was married to him or not. That hobby was more important to her than her marriage. And then two disastrous things happened. They were divorced, which was a lot harder on him than it was on her. She actually felt it like it was a freeing thing. Now she had all of her time and energy to pursue her hobby. But then she developed a rapidly advancing macular degeneration. And she lost her sight, she lost her hobby, she lost her life. What is important in your life? What's important to you in your life? As I get closer to retirement, I realize how important it is and it was to invest into the future, to invest into the things that are important in life, the things that should be important in life. The peace of God that passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Amen.